The great space station floated in the darkness above planet Proxima 7. Inside, the largest meeting hall buzzed with activity as alien beings from across the galaxy gathered for an emergency session. The Galactic Council had not called such an urgent meeting in over 50 years. High Chancellor Vex stood at the center of the massive round room. His tall, thin body cast long shadows as he raised his 4 arms to call for silence. Around him, hundreds of different alien species filled the glowing seats. Some looked like giant insects with clicking sounds. Others resembled walking trees that whispered through their leaves. A few were blob-like creatures that changed colors as they spoke. "Friends from across the stars," Vex began, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We face the greatest threat our galaxy has ever known. The Drac Empire continues to destroy everything in their path." A wave of worried sounds filled the room. Clicks, hums, whistles, and electronic beeps created a symphony of fear. Everyone knew about the Drac. They were massive reptile-like beings with dark green scales and yellow eyes that burned like fire. Their black warships moved through space, like death itself, leaving only empty worlds behind. Commander Kira from the Centauri Defense Force stood up. Her blue scales caught the light as she spoke. "The situation grows worse each day. Our scouts report that the Drac fleet now has over 10,000 ships. Our combined forces have less than 3,000 vessels." The numbers hit the council like a physical blow. Many representatives looked down at their desks or stared into space. How could they fight such overwhelming odds? "Their weapons are beyond anything we have seen," added General Torv, his insect-like head twitching nervously. "They can crack planets in half. Our strongest shields last only minutes against their firepower." An old, slug-like being called Ambassador Gorth slowly raised one of his many arms. His voice was barely a whisper, but in the silent chamber, everyone heard him clearly. "Perhaps we should remember the old stories. The legends our grandparents told us about the warrior race from the lost world." The room fell completely silent. Every species in the galaxy knew those stories. They were tales told to children about brave warriors from a planet called Earth. The stories said these humans could win battles that seemed impossible. They never gave up, even when facing certain death. "You speak of fairy tales," General Torv said with a harsh laugh. "Humans are just stories parents tell their young ones. Even if they were real once, they disappeared long ago." "The legends say they came from a world of water and green land," whispered Ambassador Gorth. "They fought terrible wars on their home planet and learned to never surrender. When they reached the stars, other races feared their determination." Chancellor Vex nodded slowly. "I have heard these stories too. They say humans could turn any defeat into victory through pure will. But Torv is right. No one has seen a human in 300 years. In the observer section, Dr. Elena Vasquez sat quietly listening to the debate. She was the only known human in the galaxy, though most beings thought she was just another mammalian species. For 30 years, she had searched ancient ruins and old computer records, looking for traces of her people. "The Drac will reach the core worlds within 6 months," Commander Kira continued. "Our fleets cannot stop them. Every battle costs us ships we cannot replace." "What about the Altarian superweapons?" asked a delegate with a voice like singing. "Crystals, destroyed in the first wave of attacks," Kira replied sadly. "The Drac seemed to know exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage." The debate continued for hours. Some suggested hiding in distant star systems. Others wanted to try diplomacy with the Drac, though everyone knew the reptiles had never shown mercy. A few spoke of ancient defensive technologies, but those secrets had been lost centuries ago. Dr. Vasquez watched the discussion with growing sadness. These good beings were going to die because they had no hope left. But she had something they did not know about. 3 months ago, while exploring an ancient Derelict ship, she had found star charts that showed the location of hidden human colonies. We could try to evacuate the core worlds, suggested a bird-like delegate with bright purple feathers. Where would we go? Asked another voice. The Drac will follow us anywhere we run. The mood in the chamber grew darker with each passing hour. Outside the great windows, the stars seemed dimmer than usual. The galaxy itself appeared to be mourning its coming destruction. Chancellor Vex finally stood again. We will recess for now. Each delegation should consider our options and report back tomorrow. May the cosmic forces guide us to wisdom. As the various aliens began to leave the chamber, Dr. Vasquez quietly made her way to a private communication booth. Her hands shook slightly as she entered a complex series of coordinates into the transmitter. The signal would travel to an empty region of space far from any known star system. The message she sent was simple, but carried the weight of desperate hope. This is Elena Vasquez, daughter of Earth. The children of Sol face extinction. The ancient enemy has returned. We need our guardians to come home. She had no way of knowing if anyone would receive her message. The coordinates came from records that were centuries old. But the legend said humans never abandoned their own. If even one human settlement still existed, they would hear her call. As she left the communication booth, Dr. Vasquez looked back at the council chamber one last time. The great beings of the galaxy sat in small groups, whispering about their hopeless situation. They had given up before the final battle had even begun. But humans were different. The story said they grew stronger when things looked darkest. They found ways to win when winning seemed impossible. If her people were still out there, they would come. The question was whether they would arrive in time, outside the station. Space seemed empty and cold. But somewhere in the darkness between the stars, ancient sensors began to detect Dr. Vasquez's signal. Deep in hidden bases that had waited for 3 centuries, warning lights started to flash. Emergency protocols activated for the first time in generations. The sleeping giant was beginning to wake up. In the council chamber, the aliens continued their debates about surrender and evacuation. None of them noticed the faint energy signature that briefly appeared on their long-range sensors before vanishing again. Something was moving in the empty spaces between the stars. Something that had been waiting for this moment for 300 years. The galaxy was about to remember why humans had become legends in the first place. 3 days had passed since Dr. Vasquez sent her desperate message into the void. The Galactic Council continued their debates, but hope was fading fast. Reports came in every hour of Drac ships moving closer to the core worlds. The Reptilian Empire showed no signs of slowing their advance. In the Kepler system, 43 allied ships hung in space like tiny lights against the darkness. Captain Rex of the Altarian Defense Fleet stared at his tactical display with growing dread. His blue compound eyes reflected the red warning lights that filled his bridge. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "long-range sensors detect a massive fleet approaching. It's the Drac Advance Force." Rex felt his heart sink. Intelligence reports had warned them this day would come. The Drac were sending 500 warships to crush the Kepler system's defenses. It would be a massacre. "How long until they arrive?" he asked quietly. 4 hours, sir. Should we begin evacuation procedures?" Rex looked around his bridge at the young crew members. Most of them had never seen real combat. They trusted him to keep them alive, but against 500 Drac ships, survival was impossible. "Send a message to all ships," he ordered. "Tell them to prepare for battle. We may not win, but we will show these monsters that we are not afraid." Far from the Kepler system, in a region of space marked as empty on every star chart, something extraordinary was happening. Hidden asteroid bases that had remained silent for 3 centuries suddenly burst into activity. Lights flickered on in massive hangar bays carved from solid rock. Ancient computers came online with systems that had waited patiently for this moment. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship Defiance. His gray hair and weathered face showed the marks of a lifetime spent preparing for this day. Around him, officers worked with calm efficiency, checking weapons systems and coordinating with other ships in the fleet. "Status report," Hayes commanded. "Lieutenant." Torres looked up from her console. "All ships report ready for combat, sir. We have 2,000 vessels in formation and standing by for your orders." Hayes nodded slowly. 2,000 ships represented the largest human fleet assembled since the Sigma incident 300 years ago. Each vessel carried advanced technology and crews that had trained their entire lives for warfare. But more importantly, each ship carried something the galaxy had forgotten existed: human determination. "Sir," called the sensor operator, "we're detecting a battle in the Kepler system. 43 Allied ships are facing a Drac force of 500 vessels." Hayes studied the tactical display showing the hopeless odds. Any other admiral would hesitate, considering the risk of revealing humanity's existence for such a small engagement. But Hayes had read the old codes. Earth protected those who could not protect themselves. "Set course for Kepler," he ordered. "Maximum speed." "Sir, if we intervene, the entire galaxy will know we exist," warned his second-in-command. "Good," Hayes replied with a cold smile. "It's time they remembered what humans can do." In the Kepler system, the Drac fleet had arrived like a swarm of Black Death. Their ships were enormous, covered in weapons that could destroy planets. The lead vessel belonged to War Chief Scar, a massive Drac with scars covering his dark scales. "Pathetic mammals," Scar hissed as he looked at the small defense fleet. "This will be over in minutes." The Allied ships opened fire first, their energy beams striking the Drac shields like raindrops against a mountain. The reptilian ships responded with devastating volleys that tore through the smaller vessels. Within minutes, 8 Allied ships had been destroyed. Captain Rex watched his fleet die around him. His own ship shook as Drac weapons hammered against his failing shields. In the distance, he could see escape pods launching from burning ships as crews abandoned their vessels. "Sir, we've lost contact with the cruiser Starlight," reported his tactical officer. "The destroyer Nova is venting atmosphere." Rex gripped his command chair as another explosion rocked his ship. They had fought bravely, but it was over. In a few more minutes, the Drac would finish off the remaining ships and move on to attack the civilian population. Then something impossible happened. Space around the Drac fleet suddenly filled with new contacts. Hundreds of ships appeared as if from nowhere, their hulls gleaming with an unfamiliar design. They moved with perfect coordination, forming attack formations that seemed almost alive in their fluid precision. "What is this?" War Chief Scar roared as alarms filled his bridge. Where did these ships come from? His sensor operator's voice shook with confusion. "Unknown, sir. They just appeared on our screens. I'm reading 2,000 vessels, all showing advanced energy signatures." Before Scar could respond, a communication signal reached his ship. The face that appeared on his screen was something he had never seen before: a human being. Admiral Hayes looked directly at the Drac commander with eyes that showed no fear. "I am Admiral David Hayes of the Earth Defense Force," the human said in a calm voice. "You have 60 seconds to withdraw from this system before we demonstrate why humans do not surrender." Scar's yellow eyes widened. Humans were myths, stories told to frighten children. Yet here was a human fleet more powerful than anything in Drac history. "Impossible," Scar snarled. "Humans are legends. You cannot exist." 30 seconds, Hayes replied, completely unmoved by the Drac's anger. Scar made the mistake that would cost him everything. Instead of retreating, he let his pride make the decision. "All ships, open fire. Destroy these pretenders." The Drac fleet unleashed a massive barrage that would have obliterated any known force. But human ships were not built like other vessels. They had been designed by a species that learned warfare on a death world where only the strongest survived. The Kondi, the human fleet, absorbed the attack with minimal damage. Their shields flickered but held. Their armor plating, made from materials unknown to other races, barely showed scratches. Then the humans returned fire. What happened next became known throughout the galaxy as the Kepler miracle. Human weapons, powered by exotic matter cores, cut through Drac shields like they were made of paper. The alien technology that had conquered dozens of star systems proved useless against Earth's military science. War Chief Scar watched in horror as his flagship shields collapsed under the human assault. His bridge filled with smoke as secondary. Explosions rocked the massive vessel. "Impossible," he whispered as his ship began to break apart. "How can they be so strong?" Admiral Hayes provided the answer in a single sentence that was recorded by every surviving ship in the system. "Because we are human, and humans never give up." The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, the Drac advance force had been completely destroyed. Not a single enemy vessel escaped to carry word of what had happened. Captain Rex stared at his screens in amazement. The mysterious human fleet had saved them all. Around him, his crew cheered and wept with relief. They had witnessed the return of Earth's children to the galaxy. The age of legends had become the age of reality. News of the Kepler victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. In every star system, on every inhabited world, beings who had cowered in fear of the Drac Empire now dared to whisper a single word: hope. The great assembly of the Galactic Council convened an emergency session once again. But this time, the mood was completely different. Where before there had been despair, now there was electric excitement. The impossible had happened. Someone had defeated the Drac in open battle. High Chancellor Vex stood before the packed chamber, his forearms trembling with emotion. "Fellow beings," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "we have received confirmed reports from the Kepler system. The Drac advance fleet has been completely destroyed." The chamber erupted in cheers, clicks, whistles, and electronic sounds of joy. Representatives who had been planning evacuation routes just days before now embraced each other with renewed hope. Commander Kira of the Centauri Defense Corps raised her hand for silence. Her blue scales seemed brighter than before, reflecting her excitement. "The reports are confirmed, but the details are difficult to believe. The attack was carried out by ships of unknown design, led by someone calling himself Admiral Hayes, of the Earth Defense Force." The word Earth hit the assembly like a physical blow. Suddenly, every representative was talking at once. Ancient legends were being whispered in dozens of languages. The mythical homeworld of the humans had become real. Dr. Elena Vasquez found herself surrounded by reporters and scientists as she made her way through the station corridors. Everyone wanted to speak with the galaxy's only known human. Her small research laboratory had become the center of galactic attention overnight. "Dr. Vasquez," called a reporter with crystalline features, "is it true that you sent a message before the Kepler battle?" Elena paused at her laboratory door. For 30 years, she had worked in quiet obscurity, searching for traces of her people. Now the entire galaxy was hanging on her every word. "Yes," she said simply. "I sent a call for help to coordinates I found in ancient records. I never expected anyone to respond so quickly." Inside her laboratory, Elena activated her communication systems and began working frantically to establish contact with the human fleet. Admiral Hayes had agreed to address the Galactic Council, but first she needed to understand what had happened to her people. The answer came in the form of a data package transmitted directly from the Defiance. As Elena read through the files, her eyes widened with amazement. Humanity had not disappeared. They had been hiding, building their strength in the empty spaces between the stars. 300 years ago, After an incident known as the Sigma War, humanity had voluntarily withdrawn from galactic politics. The war had been so devastating that most species agreed to erase it from official records, but humans remembered. They always remembered. "We never left," Admiral Hayes explained during a private communication with Elena. "We simply stepped back and watched. We built hidden colonies in dead systems, asteroid bases in empty space, and research stations in the void between galaxies. We have been preparing for this day." Elena studied the data files with growing amazement. Humanity had spent 3 centuries developing new technologies, training new generations of warriors, and building the most advanced fleet in galactic history. They had learned from every conflict, adapted to every threat, and prepared for every possibility. "How many ships do you have?" she asked. "More than enough," Hayes replied with a slight smile. "The Drac Empire believes they are the apex predators of this galaxy. They are about to learn that humans evolved on a world where apex predators became extinct." Meanwhile, in the council chambers, panic was beginning to set in among some delegations. The return of humanity was not universally welcomed. Some species remembered the old stories about human warfare and feared what might come next. General Torv clicked his mandibles nervously as he addressed a private gathering of military commanders. "If the legends are true, humans do not fight like other species. They do not seek surrender from their enemies. They seek total victory." Captain Rex, who had witnessed the Kepler battle firsthand, shook his head. "You did not see what I saw. The human ships moved like a single organism. Their weapons cut through Drac shields like they were made of light. But more than that, they saved us. They could have let us die and revealed themselves later, but they chose to protect strangers." The debate raged throughout the station. Some delegates called for immediate alliance with the humans. Others suggested caution, worried about trading one master for another. A few extremist groups even suggested that humanity might be a greater threat than the DRAK. Dr. Elena Vasquez put an end to the speculation when she released Admiral Hayes' message to the entire galaxy. The transmission was broadcast on every frequency, translated into every known language, and sent to every inhabited world. Admiral Hayes appeared on screens across the galaxy, his weathered face showing the calm confidence of a man who had spent his life preparing for this moment. Behind him, the bridge of the Defiance hummed with quiet activity. "People of the galaxy," he began, his voice carrying an authority that made even hardened warriors pay attention. "I am Admiral David Hayes, speaking for the Earth Defense Force and all human colonies. We have returned to offer our assistance in the fight against the Drac Empire." He paused, letting his words sink in across 1,000 worlds. 300 years ago, humanity chose to withdraw from galactic politics after a war that nearly destroyed us all. We have spent those centuries learning, growing, and preparing. We have watched as peaceful species built beautiful civilizations among the stars. We have also watched as predators like the Drac grew strong by feeding on the weak. The Admiral's expression hardened slightly. The Drac represent everything humanity stands against. They conquer not for resources or territory, but for the simple pleasure of destruction. They offer no mercy to those who surrender and no hope to those who resist. This makes them not just your enemy, but ours as well. Throughout the galaxy, beings leaned closer to their screens. This was the moment that would define the future of their civilization. "We do not ask you to trust us," Hayes continued. "Trust must be earned through actions, not words. We ask only that you allow us to do what humans do best: stand between those who would harm the innocent and those who need protection." The transmission ended with a simple statement that would be remembered for generations. The children of Earth have come home. The age of fear is ending. In the council chambers, High Chancellor Vex called for an immediate vote on formal alliance with humanity. The result was overwhelming: 843 votes in favor, 12 opposed, and 37 abstentions. The galaxy had chosen its champions. Now the real war could begin. Emperor Scar stood in the war room of his fortress world. Draknir Prime, the massive Drak ruler's yellow eyes burned with rage as he stared at the tactical displays covering the walls. Red indicators showed his fleets under attack across dozens of star systems. Each flashing light represented another defeat, another failure. How is this possible? Scar roared, his voice echoing through the chamber. His enormous claws scraped against the metal table as he leaned forward. We are the Drak Empire. We have conquered 100 worlds. How can these mammals defeat us? General Krex, his most experienced commander, stood at attention despite the obvious fear in his yellow eyes. He had barely escaped the human assault on the Rigel system with his life. My Emperor, these humans fight unlike any enemy we have faced. Their ships coordinate perfectly, as if controlled by a single mind. Impossible, Scar hissed. No species can achieve such coordination without our quantum communication networks. They do not need our technology, Krex replied carefully. They seem to think as one organism. When we destroy one of their ships, the others adapt instantly. When we corner them, they become more dangerous, not less. Emperor Scar's tail lashed violently, knocking over a holographic projector. The other generals in the room stepped back nervously. Their ruler's legendary temper was becoming worse with each defeat. Show me the recordings from Rigel, Scar demanded. The main display activated, showing the battle that had cost the Drak Empire 300 ships. Krex watched his Emperor's expression change from anger to confusion, to something approaching fear as the footage played. Human ships moved through space, like hunting predators. When Drak weapons hit them, they kept fighting even with massive hull damage. When surrounded, they fought their way out instead of surrendering. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to grow stronger as the battle continued, adapting to Drak tactics in real time. Look at this section. Krex pointed to a specific moment in the recording. We had surrounded a human destroyer. Its shields were down, half its weapons destroyed. Any normal crew would have surrendered. On the screen, the damaged human ship suddenly accelerated directly toward a Drak battlecruiser, ramming it at full speed. The explosion destroyed both vessels, but it also created a gap in the Drak formation that other human ships immediately exploited. They choose death over surrender, Krex continued. But more than that, they make their deaths meaningful. Every sacrifice serves their greater strategy. Emperor Scar studied the recording in silence. In 50 years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. Other species fought to survive, but humans fought to win. The difference was terrifying. What about their technology? Scar asked. Our scientists must have learned something from the wreckage. Admiral Vass, the Drak's chief technology officer, stepped forward reluctantly. My Emperor, there is very little wreckage to study. Human ships seem designed to self-destruct rather than fall into enemy hands. What little we have recovered shows technology that is unusual. Explain. Their armor is layered in ways we do not understand. It appears weaker than ours on the surface, but it absorbs damage instead of simply resisting it. Their power systems are redundant to an extreme degree. We have found ship sections that continued operating even when separated from the main vessel. Scar's eyes narrowed. You are telling me their technology is superior to ours? Not superior, Vass said carefully. Different. Their ships are built by a species that learned warfare on a single planet. Every design choice reflects that experience. Where we build for conquest, they build for survival. Where we build for intimidation, they build for effectiveness. A new alarm suddenly filled the war room. The communications officer's voice cracked with panic as he made his report. My Emperor, we are receiving emergency signals from the Outer Rim Defense Fleet. They Report a massive human force approaching our territory. Emperor Scar moved to the main tactical display. The holographic map of the galaxy showed red dots representing human fleet movements. There were far more dots than should have been possible. How many ships? Scar demanded. Initial reports suggest over 1,500 vessels, my Emperor. But the numbers keep increasing as more human ships decloak. Scar stared at the display in disbelief. For 3 centuries, the galaxy had believed humans were extinct. Now they were revealing a fleet larger than anything the Drac Empire had ever assembled. Where are they headed? He asked quietly. The communications officer's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Hear, my Emperor. They are coming directly for Dracner Prime. The war room fell completely silent. Every general, every admiral, every staff officer stared at the tactical display with growing horror. The humans were not content to simply defend themselves. They were bringing the war to the heart of the Drac Empire. General Krex found his voice first. My Emperor, perhaps we should consider negotiating with them. If they are willing to discuss terms. No. Scar's roar shook the entire room. The Drac Empire does not negotiate with prey. We are the apex predators of this galaxy. But my Emperor, Admiral Vass said carefully, if their fleet is as large as reported, and if their technology is as effective as we have seen, perhaps strategic withdrawal. Scar's massive hand struck Vass across the face, sending the smaller Drac crashing into a bank of computers. Coward! We will meet them in battle. Every ship, every weapon, every warrior of the Empire will defend our home world. But even as Scar gave his orders, reports continued to flow in from across the galaxy. Human task forces were striking at supply depots, communication relays, and staging areas with surgical precision. They were not just attacking randomly. They were systematically dismantling the infrastructure that held the Drac Empire together. Admiral Hayes had studied 3 centuries of Drac expansion patterns. He understood exactly how their empire functioned and where it was vulnerable. While Emperor Scar prepared for a glorious last battle, the humans were quietly cutting the strings that held his puppet show together. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Hayes watched the tactical displays with calm satisfaction. Around him, his officers coordinated the largest military operation in human history with quiet efficiency. Target analysis complete, reported his tactical officer. We have identified 17 critical nodes in the Drac command structure. Destroying them will leave their fleet unable to coordinate effectively. Hayes nodded. Begin Phase 2 of the operation. All task forces are cleared to engage their assigned targets. Throughout the galaxy, human ships emerged from hiding places they had occupied for decades. They struck at military bases, communication centers, and supply convoys with devastating effectiveness. Each attack was precisely planned and perfectly executed. The Drac Empire was learning what it meant to face an enemy that had spent 300 years preparing for this exact moment. They were facing humanity at war, and humanity did not fight for glory or conquest. They fought to end the war completely. The final battle for Dracner Prime lasted exactly 6 hours and 43 minutes. When it ended, the Drac Empire had ceased to exist as a galactic power. The surrender came not from Emperor Scar, but from his own generals who could no longer watch their people die in a hopeless war. General Krex stood in the communications center of the orbital defense station, his hands shaking as he activated the galaxy-wide broadcast system. Around him, the remnants of the Drac High Command waited in defeated silence. To all Drac forces throughout the galaxy, Krex announced, his voice heavy with exhaustion. By order of the Emergency Command Council, all hostilities are to cease immediately. We formally surrender to the Earth Defense Force and request terms for peace. The words echoed across thousands of star systems, reaching Drac ships that were still fighting desperately against human task forces. One by one, The black warships powered down their weapons and transmitted surrender codes. Emperor Scar was found dead in his throne room 3 hours after the surrender announcement. The official report stated that he had chosen ritual suicide rather than face defeat. However, many whispered that his own guards had decided the Empire needed new leadership to survive. Admiral Hayes received the surrender notification while standing on the bridge of the Defiance. His officers looked to him for orders, but the Admiral simply nodded and spoke into his communicator. All ships, cease fire. Accept all surrender requests and treat prisoners according to galactic law. The war is over. The silence that followed was almost overwhelming. For months, the galaxy had echoed with the sounds of battle. Now suddenly, there was peace. On the Galactic Council Station, representatives from hundreds of species gathered to witness humanity's first official diplomatic meeting since their return. The main assembly hall had been decorated with banners from every member world, creating a rainbow of colors and symbols. Dr. Elena Vasquez walked through the corridors with a mixture of pride and nervousness. In a few hours, she would be sworn in as Earth's first official ambassador to the Galactic Council. After 30 years of searching for her people's history, she was about to help write their future. High Chancellor Vex stood at the podium, his forearms spread wide as he addressed the packed chamber. Today marks a new chapter in galactic history. We welcome back the children of Earth, not as conquerors, but as protectors and allies. The chamber erupted in applause that lasted for nearly 10 minutes. Representatives who had cowered in fear just weeks before now stood and cheered for the species that had saved them all. Admiral Hayes entered the chamber wearing the formal dress, uniform of the Earth Defense Force. The deep blue fabric bore the emblem of a green and blue planet surrounded by stars. As he walked toward the speaker's platform, the entire assembly fell silent. Honored representatives, Hayes began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. 300 years ago, humanity chose to step back from galactic politics. We had seen too much war, caused too much destruction. We believed the galaxy would be better without us. He paused, looking around the chamber at the faces of dozens of different species. We were wrong. The galaxy does not need warriors who fight for conquest or glory. But it does need guardians who will stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. Today, Earth offers itself in that role. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Delegates stood and cheered, their various sounds of approval creating a symphony that could be heard throughout the station. Commander Kira of the Centauri Defense Corps was among the first to approach Hayes after his speech. Her blue scales reflected the chamber's lights as she extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Admiral," she said with genuine respect, "on behalf of all the species you saved, thank you. But I must ask, what happens now?" The Drac Empire controlled hundreds of systems. Their people need leadership and guidance. Hayes nodded thoughtfully. That is not a decision for Earth alone to make. We propose a joint administration council with representatives from all major species. Humanity will provide security and logistic support, but the Drac people should choose their own path forward. Over the following days, the details of the post-war galaxy began to take shape. Human ships established patrol routes through former Drac territory, but they worked alongside vessels from dozens of other species. The message was clear. This was not a human conquest, but a collaborative effort to build something better. Dr. Vasquez found herself at the center of a diplomatic revolution. Her small office became the unofficial embassy for Earth, as representatives from every corner of the galaxy sought meetings with humanity's ambassador. "The requests keep coming," she told Admiral Hayes during one of their regular communications. "Everyone wants to establish trade agreements, cultural exchanges, technology-sharing partnerships. It seems the entire galaxy wants to be our friend." Hayes smiled slightly. "That's good, But we need to be careful. Friendship built on gratitude alone does not last. We need to prove that humanity deserves trust through our actions, not just our military strength. The proof came quickly. Human relief ships began arriving in former Drac systems, carrying medical supplies, food, and construction equipment. Instead of demanding tribute or territory, Earth offered aid to anyone who needed it. When the planet Nexus 7 was struck by a natural disaster, human rescue teams worked alongside local emergency services to save thousands of lives. When pirates attacked trade routes in the Outer Rim, human patrol ships responded within hours to protect merchant vessels from any species. The galaxy began to understand that humanity's return was not about replacing one empire with another. It was about creating something new, a galactic community based on mutual protection and cooperation. 6 months after the surrender, the Galactic Council voted unanimously to establish the Galactic Protection Accord. The agreement created a joint defense force with Earth providing the backbone of military strength, while other species contributed according to their abilities and resources. Admiral Hayes was appointed as the first Supreme Commander of the joint force, but he made it clear that the position was temporary. Earth will serve as guardians until the galaxy is strong enough to protect itself, he announced. Our goal is not to rule, but to teach others how to stand strong against those who would threaten peace. The Drac people, freed from their emperors, warmongering, began the slow process of rebuilding their civilization. Many chose to join the Galactic Protection Accord, using their military skills to protect the same worlds they had once threatened. As Dr. Vasquez looked out at the stars from her new embassy, she reflected on how much had changed. Humanity had returned to the galaxy, not as the legendary warriors of ancient stories, but as something better, protectors who chose to serve rather than rule. The age of empires was ending. The age of cooperation had begun.